My name is Chan, and this is my final project for Herbal Pharmacy. Just to give you a little bit of an introduction, I'll give you a little information about me. So I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2012, and I have a Bachelor's of Science in Natural Sciences. So it actually seems to pair really well with my master's that I'm currently pursuing in herbal medicine. So this is my second trimester. As you can see kind of behind me here, I am an avid gardener, so this is just part of my garden, but I like to grow things like lots of different tomatoes, Cherokee tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, as well as patio tomatoes. I also have green peppers, banana peppers, parsley, lemon balm, lavender, sage, thyme, so a lot of different herbs. I'm really into gardening. So really excited to be doing this project today. Just to give you a little bit of information about this project, I will be presenting on valerian root. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and present to you all to make you all sort of my participants in my show. But valerian root, this is sort of the first herb that really got me into sort of gardening in the herb scene. I have a very strong attachment to valerian root, so I thought I would go ahead and do and perform with three different preparation methods of valerian root. So I'm going to show you a cordial today. I'll also be showing you tinctures as well as an herbal lozenge, and all three of those will involve valerian root in some form. Okay, so putting all of those in together, you can start to see how they kind of layer out a bit. I like to put in the herbs, the heaviest herbs at the bottom, and then followed by kind of the least dense or least heavy up to the lightest. So that's usually how I typically prepare this, and then, you know, I end up shaking it anyway, but it's sort of part of that ritual process that I use to create this particular tincture, really all my tinctures. So after I've added in my herb, which you can see comes to about 2/3, a little bit more with that scientific method with exact measurements that I gave you there, I then go ahead and use my menstruum. So this is going to be vodka that I actually use, and I always like to have sky vodka. I think it has some sort of connection maybe with the lunar and solar methods, you know, sky. But you can use any alcohol that's going to work for you. This one's about $25 from the liquor store. But this is 80 proof, so it's 40% alcohol by volume, which is going to be one of the best alcohol volumes for these herbs that I have today, particularly for the lemon balm as well as for the German chamomile as well. But what I'll do then is I go ahead and I'll fill up the jar. And you'll start to notice that as I fill it up, you know, it looks like it's not filling up very quickly, but that's because it's filling in the spaces in that herb. So you may notice if you come back tomorrow, you may have to end up adding more alcohol, which I typically do, just because we want to make sure that alcohol is sufficiently covering that herb. So you can see here, I'm filling up until really just about the jar lip. So we'll go ahead and bottle this, close this up. Then I'll just go ahead and put the lid on it, seal it tightly. I will label this one, and I'll put it in my windowsill. So I'll let this go in my windowsill at least until tomorrow, and then I'll come in and I'll shake it up, and if I need to, I'll add more alcohol just so it still reaches the lip. But typically I'll let this one again sit for about a month, And I usually people who want some of this at around the month time frame, otherwise I'd leave it a bit longer, but this is totally fine, that works. So we label it, and then my end product, I would go ahead, once I am done, I would strain this after that month, you know, get all the herbs out of all the herb plant, and then I'd go ahead and bottle it. So I use like little filters, little devices to go ahead and fill up these bottles, and then I'll label this one as well, so you can see this one's for the Peaceful Pasithea. So that's what it does look like. But that's my tincture. That's the Peaceful Pasithea. This is my most popular tincture that I make, and that is using valerian root. That 2 tablespoons of honey, and I'll add to it that valerian decoction. So just pouring that in here. And so it looks nice and rich, kind of golden brown. And then what I'll do is start to add some into my mortar, so the ashwagandha powder. And what I'm going for is it sort of, I wouldn't say dough-like, but kind of that type of consistency. So I'm able to form the balls, or those lozenges. So I'm going to pour just a bit in here. And I'm going to use actually my spoon instead of the pestle to go ahead and mix that up a little bit. So what I'm looking for is, again, sort of a dough-like consistency. You can see it start to form a bit there. But I'll continue to add more of the decoction honey mix until I get that right consistency. I'm adding in quite a bit for this round. But again, you don't have to necessarily use an herbal honey like I have. You can use any honey that you have. And again, more of that local honey is probably going to be of better medicinal value to you. So that might work out a little better. And you can start to see this one's turning a little dough-like. I think you can kind of see that here. You can see it sticking to my spoon a little bit. But ideally what I'm going to end up doing then is, once I've added enough of my decoction and honey mixture, which you can see me doing there, so it looks like it's going to be pretty good. But once I've added enough, then I'll go ahead and start to form the little balls. To make this cordial, as you saw from the ingredients, I have a few that I did go ahead and measure out before I combine them in my empty jar. So I usually use recycled jars, and so this is an old spaghetti jar that I'm using. But first I'll have that valerian root. So again, weighing that out, I'll actually add that first to my cordial. I'm also including the hawthorn berries. So those hawthorn berries are, again, good for the heart, so that's going to really come into play with that title, The Velvet Heart. So these will go in second, and so I'll just layer those into my jar. I also have my reishi, so the Ganoderma lucidum. And so I got this powder from the MUIH Herbal Dispensary. So I would go ahead and add this in next. And I think this is, again, Ganoderma reishi is kind of that cure-all, that panacea. So I think this is going to be helpful for sort of rounding out this cordial and all its different components. I also have included mint, so the Mentha piperita. This is fresh from my garden, so I'll go ahead and pluck off the stems before I add it into my cordial preparation. But I actually have the regular peppermint. I also grow myself I grow a chocolate peppermint as well, so a nice little strain variation there. Not sure what that scientific name is, but again, you could get a little experimental with these cordials, so you can see what's going to work best for you. And since I happen to have sort of that chocolate mint, I thought that'd be really cool to add to my cordial, especially pairing with the velvet. I also have my cherries. So I think the cherries kind of represent the heart. They're kind of heart-shaped a little bit. So I actually leave them whole in my cordial. And so I'll add them, and they'll actually soak into my menstruum. And so these, I think, with that dark burgundy color and their heart shape, that's really going to add to that heart theme with this cordial. I also have some plums. So I've actually halved my plum, and I've left the pit inside, but I bought a nice kind of burgundy red plum, and I did split this in two to represent sort of two hearts becoming one whole. So I like to do a lot of sort of sacred numbers and kind of spiritual ideas, and I think that really does add to the love in these preparations. I'd also go ahead and add in a little bit of cinnamon. So I'm going to do a dash of cinnamon at the end, and that's for sort of that fire, that passion, and I think that's going to just round out the whole cordial itself. And then I'll actually, again, combine all of these into my empty jar, and once I've combined them, then I'll go ahead and cover them with my menstruum, which is going to be this Di Saronno. So this is one of my favorite cordial liqueurs. It is 28% alcohol by volume. So I think that's going to be helpful for us, rather for my cordial, and it really does kind of smooth out the flavor. If once I let this settle for a while, if I find that I think it's going to be best to maybe sweeten it a bit, I will add a little local homemade honey. But most of the time with the liqueur, it tends to do it itself since it is kind of sweet. Okay, so now I've successfully added in all of them. You can kind of see what it looks like there. But I started with the valerian at the bottom and all the different herbs, followed by the plums and then the cherries, and there's a dash of cinnamon at the top. But cordials are my favorite, so I decided to leave this one for last. And once I have successfully added those to that jar, I would just go ahead and add in the liqueur. So all I'm going to do is fill this up as much as I can here. You can see it starting to pour into that jar. And so again, I'll leave just a little bit of room at the top once I get to the lip of the jar. I'll come in and you can see it actually starting to bubble. You can kind of see some of that there, it's bubbling. But just want to make sure that we're filling with as much alcohol as we can. And if you don't have enough, it's no worries, but ideally you would have enough to fill your jar. And so with our cordials, we'll actually leave these to macerate for, as little as a month, as little as a few weeks, but ideally, the longer that you let them macerate, the stronger they're actually going to be. So for mine, I'm actually preparing this one for the holiday season, since it is kind of that velvet heart, a little bit of that burgundy, warm red color. So I think this will be really good for around the holiday season and winter time. So something to maybe sip around the fire. But that's it. That's what it looks like to create a cordial.